for as you go about your master gardener duties. I want to do things a little bit different. I know that we all have our phones out looking at the weather, so I'm not going to keep you too long. But I wanted to start by showing you guys some pictures and showing you why school and community gardens are important and why we really even care if we have them. So do we have a clicker or do I need to be here?
No, you need to be mouse. I know the log lights for it.
Okay. All right, I always like to start my talks with this lady here. She's an incredible lady. Louise, you might not recognize him. Do you know Mrs. Bates, Louise, from your work in Atlanta? Mrs. Bates is at the Toby Grant Community Garden, and she is the matriarch of this garden, and she's one of my favorite people ever. If you'll notice a little bit about the garden beds are high. They're about waist high, which tells you what? What can we tell about that? Older people. This is a lot of seniors. And you'll notice the fence around. This is actually a housing, lack of a better term, it's Section 9 housing. This is for, I think there is a collaboration between the DeKalb County Housing Project and a lot of nonprofits that have gotten together and put this garden in with water and everything. She is a really fun lady to get to know. When you show up at the garden, in order to get in, you have to find her because she's the only one with the key. And they actually rent these plots for $10 a piece. Now, why do you think they rent plots in a Section 9 housing area?
Commitment, ownership.
Commitment and ownership. For years, they did not charge, and people didn't take it seriously. So they charge $10, and they get all the seeds and plants they want, and it pays for their water. And it shows ownership. Every year she does a first fruits festival where she will invite people who've helped her in her garden come, and actually you can sit and eat some amazing food, because not only are these amazing gardeners, they're amazing old Southern women cooks. So you eat very well if you're in the know with Mrs. Bates. One funny story she tells is a lot of the people, when they first put this garden in, they didn't know each other. It's like in a typical maybe apartment complex now, or even some neighborhoods. You know, you drive in, you click that button, you put your car in the garage and you click it and you don't know anybody. Well, in this situation, it's sad and it's dangerous. A lot of these people live alone. They're mostly elderly and they didn't know their neighbors. So now we put a garden in. The most important thing about this garden is not the food. All right, I'm going to say that again because that's super important. The most important part of this garden is not the food. It's the fact that now Mrs. Bates knows her neighbor and knows when the grandson's coming to visit, or so-and-so knows when so-and-so has a doctor's appointment, or they know when someone's around here that doesn't need to be here. They work together in their garden. One Thanksgiving, they all grow collard greens. How many of y'all have ever grown collards? You need to do that, easy peasy. But the trick to collards being good is you need a good frost before they taste good. So we had a good frost right before Thanksgiving. All the ladies were going to harvest, and for Thanksgiving Day, they were going to eat together, and they were going to have their collard greens. Well, they got up, and they go out, and the collards are gone. See, the gasp, because it's a serious business. They were torn up, plots were messed up. She was furious. So they did a little investigating, and they didn't call the police, but they did find out that someone's kid who had been visiting did this for meanness. Once they found that kid did penance for 1 year. He weeded and watered and hauled for these people. And I've often wondered what happened to that kid because, my guess is if he would have been turned over to the police, it wouldn't have been nearly the life lesson that he learned at the hands of Mrs. Bates and her friends. So my point of introducing Mrs. Bates first is to tell you that community gardens are so much more than the food. They're about community. Community gardens in areas like this mean people are safer. They do have access to food. They live longer because they have a social life. So when you work on a community garden, that is what you need to keep in mind, and that is what you need to take seriously. So this is Mrs. Bates. She's a wonder. We all love her. And I wanted to show you a few other gardens around just to give you a feel for how different community gardens can be. This is in Atlanta near where the old Carver Homes was. Anybody old Atlanta? All right, you may remember Carver Homes was a housing project that was known nationally for its violence. And they tore it down, but what they did is with the new Section 9 rules, they dispersed the people. The lady who is the head of this area here actually was very active in the civil rights movement. And during the troubled times, she hid some of Martin Luther King's buddies in her house. And I'm fascinated with her, but what she wants me to tell her is why she gets bugs in her broccoli every year. But you can see by the look of this is not a very wealthy garden. We have tires used, we have old hand-me-down chairs. We do have a pretty substantial fence because we're in an area of Atlanta that's really not really safe to be around. But we do have a lot of donated areas, but these people love this garden. These chairs in the warm, this was taken in the cold November day. In the summer, these chairs are full of people laughing and people sharing food and stories. So this is another type of garden. This is a garden in Cobb County. This is Green Meadows Garden. This garden is won national awards, and this is a different type of garden. As you can see, it's very neat. The plots are beautiful. They are well kept. The weeds are kept down. There is a tool shed that's built to look like an old barn. They have bees on the property. They have a bluebird trail, and they have a medicinal garden that's based on the Cherokee Indian lore. So this is another type of garden. The people here pay about $50 a year to participate, and that really only gets them the plot. But they have events here. Most of these people are retired, but they're young retirees. They love to have social events. So they'll have a class there, or they'll have a speaker, or they'll have a dinner, or a bee demonstration, or at least once a month, there's some social event there. Whatever food is not eaten is donated to the food pantry. So another demographic, another type of community garden, but again, the common thread is the community. And this is just one more. I could show you probably hundreds of pictures. This is in DeKalb County, near Stone Mountain. This garden was actually founded as a way to foster race relations in Stone Mountain. And it has grown over the years. Woo. You okay? Is she okay?
Yeah, this is my what
And it exploded?
Champagne, that's it, it is
Right.
champagne.
A little something in there. That's right. Okay. Wow. Well, this garden is interesting because it is on old Parks and Rec land that was in the floodplain. So the county deemed it useless. So they moved their community garden here, and they like to grow up. As you can see, they get crazy with their trellises. This is a population of mixed race. They come together and have wonderful time together. They eat together. They are a wonderful example of what can happen in a community garden. So those are 4 community gardens, totally different populations, different races, ages, demographics, socioeconomic areas, all community. Now, again, this is community. This is Healthy Life Garden. This is in Spalding County. Healthy Life Garden is an area of Griffin that is very dangerous. You hear about a lot of shootings, but there's an old school there. It's called the Rosenwald School. And for those history buffs, that's actually a school that was donated during times of segregation. And it was the black high school. And at the time, now it's pretty much abandoned. And people, it was grown up, it was dangerous. Some of the old timers in the area remember it fondly. Community garden. His name is Wade Hutchinson. If you haven't met him, you will. He comes across kind of gruffy, but he is a great agent, and he's got a big heart because this is his project. And what they found is they'd show up to do work days and nobody would come. And they'd show up the next week and nobody would come. That actually came out of the old Rosenwald School are for children's story time. So the moms feel comfortable enough now to take their children down here in the summer for story time. So I just love that garden. It's probably my very favorite garden. They donate a lot of their food. Louise knows this garden. Feed the hungry. So a lot of different ways you can use community gardens. I feel that school, and in my job, I treat school gardens kind of as a subset of a community garden because they really are. And the first thing I want to do, now that we've kind of thought about this and thought about what community gardens are, is if you're starting a community garden, the most important thing is what? What would you think the most important thing is?
Water.
Water, soil, it's the people. All right, if a garden fails, it will most likely fail because of people problems. I've seen it more times than I care to admit. I've seen gardens shut down because somebody keeps bringing their dog. It's people problems. So what I would like you to do now is I gave you a yellow sheet of paper. I'm going to give us 4 minutes, and I want you to think that you are starting a community garden. And you're thinking, this is going to be my garden, and I'm going to make the rules. What rules do you think are important to start a community garden? So I'm going to give us 4 minutes on the clock. We're going to brainstorm.
And I will just tell you that when I first started with community gardens, we needed no stinking rules. And now my community gardens have like 4 pages in them.
right, we got 1 minute. See what y'all come up with. All right, let's see what you got. Fred, you've been writing hard. What you got? Give me a rule.
Well, the big one was respect each other and the other person's tools.
Okay, respect each other's tools. And what would that look like?
And that would be, if you see somebody else's tools laying on the ground, put them where that person's spot is.
Okay. You bring your own tools, use your own tools. Okay, there you go. What else? Who else? Stephanie, you got something?
Basically, dogs and children run amok.
Why would you bring a dog to a food garden? Any ideas?
It's good.
I always wondered that, but yeah, okay. Natalie, you had your hand up.
Yes, I had, only you can take foods from what you've grown.
Okay.
Okay, that's where I didn't hear
She said you only get to take food from the plot that you grow in, right? Okay, and somebody in the back row had their hand up. Okay, what you got?
it. We learned about this, no smoking in the garden.
Right,
Oh, yeah.
yeah. Okay, and why?
No smoking.
Virus.
Okay, the mosaic virus, yes, okay.
Spray, bug spray or insect repellent on people within a certain area of the garden.
Okay, so are you meaning no insecticides or no?
Well, yeah, I'm thinking more personal, like you put on bug spray,
Okay,
you put on sunscreen,
okay,
and then you spray, so I'm not even going into the pesticide.
Okay. okay. So you want a garden where nobody comes thinking like,
I don't,
Bug spray or-
yeah, I mean, at least not using it right there as they walk,
Okay.
in a certain area.
Okay. okay, anything else? Anything different? Yeah,
I said embrace the pollinators.
okay. And how do we, oh, that man's after my heart. Well, how do we embrace the pollinators?
By real conscientious use of any insecticides, and by planting a butterfly bush or something that attracts
Okay,
pollen,
and what will that do for your food garden?
make it much more productive.
All right, there we go. Yes,
I would remove social from that.
okay, that's good.
You know,
It's all good.
have fun,
Uh-huh.
celebrate success. Everyone can have a chance to speak, respect other people's opinions, and not just consensus.
Okay. So basically, did you have something back there?
Oh, I just kind of put, why not get together and plant different things so you can share?
And what would be a good example of a plant in the community garden that would be good for that?
Well, if you only have so much of a plot, maybe one has one certain lettuce or someone else grow another kind,
Okay.
just so you have a variety.
Okay. A side note on that is, what do you think the number one thing people in Georgia want to grow? And can you grow tomatoes over and over in the same plot every year and not have trouble? And that happens a lot. So to your note, one thing you could do is rotate on who did tomatoes. Maybe rotate around the tomato plot. Blueberries are an excellent community plants because they're perennial and you can share them and they make nice backbones for community gardens. Yes.
Logbook, like,
Okay.
to document what you're growing and then also the comings and goings and who's worked on what.
Okay, so keeping good communications open. We actually have a publication that you can Google. It's How to Start a Community Garden, Getting People Involved. And one of my friends, our friend Ellen Bowski, did a great job on this. And one of the things that they talk about here is how important it is to start your community rules. Some rules that we really all need to think about is the pesticide. Okay, it's almost impossible to say, okay, this part of the garden you can use pesticides in and this one you can't because drift and all sorts of things. So you have to come to a consensus on what our policy is going to be. If we're going to say no pesticide, does that mean no Roundup on the weeds in the middle? If not, who's picking those? You need to come to consensus on the common areas, like the weed paths. If you just show up, if everybody just shows up and works in their little plot and nobody takes care of the middle, then you're gonna attract all sorts of things you don't want, right? So you have to figure out a rule for, do you have to show up 2 times a year to work on a group work day? Or are you responsible for this much of the weeds outside your plot? What do you do if someone pays their $10 and doesn't show? And their plot gets overrun with weeds that have lots of seeds and blows into your plot. So a lot of every community garden should have a rule. If you don't show up within so much time, this is what happens to your plot. Maybe you forego your $10 and then someone else on the waiting list gets the plot. Things like music, things like bringing your dog, things that you wouldn't even think about. Can you bring your small children to what happens if you go on vacation and you're not able to pick your plot? If the rule is nobody can pick out of anybody else's plot, then you may have wasted food. Maybe you have an agreement with the neighbor. So my purpose with this exercise is just for y'all to think a little bit that these things are a little more complex than we all like to think. Like Louise was saying, you think you don't need rules, and then you get a couple people in there and they're the boss. So it's good to have rules. It's good to have a rule sheet that everybody signs in agreement. Some of the things they came up with is the tall crops. I love corn, but if I'm in a plot and I'm growing tall crops and it shades the person behind me, that can be problematic. So you have to have some consensus about that. Fertilizer is another thing. Have a date that you have to have your plot planted by for summer crops. Or maybe that's the day that you decide, okay, if your plot isn't planted by this date, we're going to take it back over. So these are, this is just to let you guys realize how much the human element is involved in the community gardens.
Do they typically have an appointed leader?
Yes, garden manager. And I'm talking about the successful gardens. All successful gardens have to have rules and have to have a community manager. And that manager will do things like plan work days, maybe work on getting a speaker out to talk to y'all at the garden. Maybe you want to do a story time. Up in Cobb County, they have a time to read book club where the people read a book for a month and they meet at the garden. So manager is the point person. And usually that point person rotates every year. You don't want to create some kind of kingdom, right? You want to rotate around the responsibilities. But those are the successful gardens. It breaks my heart to show up at a garden where it's over because of people problems. So by going in and having a manager and having your rules, you eliminate those from the get-go. And you need a tough manager. You need somebody who's going to take that plot away if you're not doing your thing, so that you don't create weeds for everybody else. Because community garden is intensive gardening. You're not alone. Whatever happens in Fred's plot is going to affect Natalie's plot and is going to affect Marge's plot, whether you want them to or not. Cross-pollination, drift from chemicals, weed seed, all those things. It's a community, in good and bad. So we talked a little bit, and I showed you Miss Bates. So these are her garden rules. This is from her garden. No smoking, no cussing or cursing, no fighting, and no stealing. And these things can get you kicked out of her garden. And those are her main rules, so much so that they printed a sign for her. Now, in North Fulton County, there's a lovely garden that is actually attached to the community center, to the government annex, where Extension's located in North Fulton. And there's the rules that they have listed. So watering issues, when your plots have to be cleaned up, no unauthorized pesticide permitted, that type of thing. Tools must be returned to the shed, gate must be locked. When you pay your fee to come in, then you get the code to the gate.
What does only harvest crops from their sunbeds mean?
That means just what we were saying earlier. If you grew it in your plot, it's yours. You can't pick from your neighbor's plot. Right. They actually have put in a rain garden over there. It's a harvest rainwater. So rules are important. How about that? Rules are necessary. So we're going to segue into a little bit in school gardens.
Lights
Yeah, if you don't mind. Okay. So how many of you guys are involved in a school garden now, even before becoming a master gardener? Anybody? Anybody's kids have a school garden?
Yes,
Yes. Where do your kids go to school?
Vickery.
Do they have, is it a food garden?
It's just a butterfly pollinator garden.
Pollinator garden. Okay, great. About, see, my daughter is 23. When she started kindergarten, I started a school garden, one of the first school gardens in Cherokee County at Sixes Elementary School. And it was a pollinator garden. It wasn't a food garden. And we had a really good time teaching the kids about pollinators outside. And this is now, of course, a big deal. And because of STEM certification, it is a really big deal. Is everybody familiar with STEM certification?
Yes.
In the state of Georgia, you can have your school STEM certified, and STEM is science, technology, engineering, and math. In order to do that, it's a complex thing. It looks really good for your school, and one of the ways that schools do that is through their school garden. They teach science and math and engineering and technology through the garden. So we get tons of calls every week on starting a school garden. Cobb County Master Gardeners work with 50 school gardens. Now, I'm sure that you all have been drilled many times that your role is an educator, not a hole digger, right? And it's easy to get trapped into that. Won't you come help me? You know, and we all can't be digging holes for 50 school gardens. So they provide educational opportunities and support and site visits when needed. And Cobb County has many schools that are STEM certified. So it's real interesting to see how they use their garden. But a school garden can be a food garden, which is the most popular kind, because in theory, it's lovely to grow food in the garden that the kids grew and take it in and serve it for lunch. That would be the ideal model. And actually up in Cherokee County is one of the first farm to school models in the nation. When Hickory Flat Elementary School started, the farmers donated a plot and they actually grew the food for the school lunch in the plot. That was before we had a lot of lawsuits and people worried about, you know, what my kid's eating that I haven't washed or any of the problems that we have today. But it was a successful model. And in theory, that's what we'd like to go for here. There's also history gardens where a teacher, I think 5th grade, they study Lewis and Clark. Well, happily, Lewis and Clark brought back seeds, and you can get them from Monticello and grow a Lewis and Clark garden. All sorts of ways we can use a school garden. So I'm going to show y'all some examples of things I've run across. It doesn't have to be big. It can be small. This was the first, I think this is Little River Garden, and a parent donated these, and they started it to talk about herbs. So these are all herbs. So like we have some oregano here, and it looks like there's some rosemary up there. So they would actually take these herbs in and let the kids taste herbs. So it was a tasting garden. It was the first part of that garden. Didn't have to be big. And this is down in South Georgia. And this was some spinach plants that they're putting in. And you can see a lot of these kids had never seen spinach plants before. So this was going to be a food garden. This is a math garden. So the math teachers actually worked with the gardeners to develop these beds, and they're all different shapes. There is a square, a triangle, circle, octagon, all sorts of shapes. And they bought these architectural rulers and put them on the beds, and they could actually will tie strings, so like at 6 inches all the way across, there'll be a string, and then they can subdivide their plots. They can decide how many seeds need to go in one section of the garden, how big something is grown using their rulers. They have metric and English standards there. So they've gotten with the math teacher to determine how he can use math outside in the garden. This is a sensory garden for kindergartners. I love this sign. They have a lot of things there that the kids can smell and feel and listen to. They listen to the pollinators. And they have magnifying lenses they can take out there and look for things. They have lamb's ear that's really soft for them to touch. And they have basil they can rub together and smell. So from the very beginning, every grade level at this school is in the garden on some level. And for kindergarten, it's the sensory garden. And these are not, these pictures,
Where is this one?
this one is in Fulton County. So these gardens are not, I'm not showing you pictures of the same garden. These are all from different school gardens. This is Ford Elementary. This was one of the first STEM schools in the state. Now, Ford Elementary is in a very wealthy area of Cobb County, and they have a person who is employed by the school to run the garden. Now, I can't imagine in my wildest dreams a school system justifying that, but they do, because was such a big deal to get their certification that other schools all over the state come to learn from them. So that's how they justified it. They have their whole school are different gardens. They have a wildlife garden. They also have a math garden. They have a bird garden, a pollinator garden. They have a word garden, which I think I have a picture of here. Every grade level works in a garden, and they use community members to help. The water department came out and built this really cool water feature there. So it is not just the garden themselves, it's what they do with it when they're studying the water cycle. They actually had a contest at this school for kids to figure out a way to filter water. And the winning team was actually filmed and put on television, and their design was submitted to a national contest. So that takes care of the engineering part of the STEM. So we're going to see a lot more of these as time goes on. Chances are really good you're going to be involved in a school garden that is seeking STEM certification. This is a word garden, and it's a part of the history garden. So they actually grow plants from colonial times in this garden, and these are the vocabulary words. So the kids can actually pick up and move their vocabulary words. If a group of kids are studying and they figure they understand boycott and revolution, they move them to the side and leave the ones they need to study. But they're outside, and they're in with the colonial plants, and that's their word garden. And this is a rain catchment system. So the water department came and they learned about water flow, and they learned about water rates, and they learned about how plants absorb water. And this is connected to the roof, and the water's filtered, and then it goes into the food plots there. So really cool, another use of the school garden. This is another school that does food crops. I thought this was really pretty how they did this. So they're doing some experiments with mulch right now. So they've been trying to grow things in these plots, and they want to know if the red mulch works better than the white mulch. Does one plant do better in one than the other? So that's an example of food crops. And food crops is really one of the things that we see most of. Usually if someone is interested in a history garden, we may give them resources to look up what plants they need to plant or that they could plant. If they're looking at pollinators, it's another thing that we can help them with. But food crops is what most people are interested in. And there's some things we have to think about as gardeners and stewards of gardens for food plots. Insecticide use is one. Are we going to spray for insects? Most schools do not want you to spray for insects. If you've ever tried to grow totally organically, you know that means you have to be good at it, because you're not going to be able to rely on 7 to kill your cabbage worms. You're going to have to be creative in coming up with something. We also have the food safety issue. I've been traveling around the state for a while now looking at gardens, and that's been a huge concern for me, is that people think because it's grown homemade at the school and it's grown organically, it's safe, and it's not. Think about Chipotle, right? We all love Chipotle, all that fresh organic food, and how many people got sick. Well, I worry about people harvesting and not properly refrigerating or not properly washing. So one of my big pushes this past year has been making sure that we're teaching community gardens. And do we have a fax agent in Forsyth County?
Her name is Barbara, I don't know how that.
Barbara will be very active, I'm guessing, in school garden safety for food crops. I know that Keisha Falk, who is the FACTS PDC Professional Development Coordinator, She manages all the FACTS agents, and this is also a push for her. So when we create a school garden that people are going to eat out of, we have to be aware that we have to take good care of that produce, and we have to make sure it's clean and it's safe for the kids to eat. But food plots is the most important, or the biggest growing section, and it's a challenge. You know, in a community and a school garden, it's a challenge. You don't have a whole row to plant corn so that if the wind comes and you lose 10 stalks, you're good. You know, you have most of the time a 4x8 plot of land, and that's where you grow your garden. You have to worry about crop rotation. You have to worry about making sure they're together. One's not going to shade the other one out. You have to worry about getting the most in there that you can, but you need to allow for some air circulation so you don't have to worry as much about fungal diseases. You have to worry about your water. Is it draining well? Is your soil really good? Because you have a very limited space to successfully grow food, right? So if you'll turn the lights on for me, please. These are our basic vegetable crops. And I say basic because these are the things that most people grow, right? And if you're a school gardener, these are what you're going to grow, because we don't go to school in the summertime, right? So these are what we're going to grow. When I teach school garden, and yes, here. So what we're going to do to get you guys thinking about how challenging this is we're going to design a plot. A piece of paper that looks like this, and these have 2 4x8 plots on there, okay? And I want you to design a food garden with these plots. All right, so let me pen these out first. I'm just going to pass it down. And I'm also going to give you something to use. Several of you have your books with you, and all this information will be in your books. But I also have a really handy thing that the university has, and it is the vegetable planting chart. This is a great resource to have because our specialists have identified varieties that grow well here, and it has some spacing information. So if you look under the spacing rows per plant, the second number will tell you about how much space you need between plants. And you're not growing in rows now, right? You're growing in plots. So things get a little more tricky there. So I'm going to give you a few minutes to look at it and just see if you can come up with a good plot. You can use warm season or cool season, whatever you prefer. If you've ever researched the square foot gardening method, it's really helpful in this exercise. I'll give everybody a few minutes to look at that. And if you have any questions, let me know. Doesn't have to be perfect. This is just kind of a practice run.
And both these 4x8?
Yes, both of them are 4x8. The first one's just kind of divided for you. When I do my community garden plot, I like things neat and organized, so I divide mine out.
So these,
Correct. They don't look exactly as you guys. I apparently didn't do well in the E part of the stem, the engineering part. So the first number is going to be if you're planting rows, between the rows. So we're not worried about 30. And you'll notice some of them are very wide. Like one of them says 4 to 12 inches. That's pole beans. Depends on what kind of pole beans are growing.
Yes, that could be next career. That could be next career.
It's actually, it's actually therapeutic. It's, I got some of the laws. So, and Fred works about 6 therapeutic programs in there. And he's got a whole workshop. He's trying to keep it kind of small and select, because he wants people who are just really interested, and not just people who are just interested. So I'll show her name today. Oh, Jefferson's.
We have a part of their occupation workshop is in work with them. We took that a group.
This would be good because this could get me to make something like that. On March 23rd, 22nd. I'm not.
Is there a date?
If it is, it's not much, because he didn't mention anything.
Are y'all finding this a little more challenging than you thought? Yeah. How many beans to plant to get the most beans you can get and not encourage fungal disease? What is that balance? If you plant tomatoes, they take up a lot of space. Do you want tomatoes that badly that you might not get other things? It's tricky.
Tomatoes is on the list. Oh, 2 pages.
And you don't have to know, this is just a guide. You can, whatever you like. If we have good weather, you can do 3 plantings of bush beans before we even hit a frost. And if you're not growing food in your plot all year long, you're wasting time and energy and space. So you can grow food in Georgia pretty much all year long. Yeah, because behind my house is this garden called God's Garden. I'm a beekeeper, and they use my bees for, because they like to use them for pollination. And they just decided they weren't going to try this winter. They put a big sign up, "We're tired. See you in the spring." At my house right now, I have kale. I mean, not kale. Well, I've got onions growing, and I've got garlic growing. And I finished the last of the greens right before Christmas.
feet. Let's see, by,
Oh, it's still that way.
so 4 feet here, so that's 105.
Yeah.
Do you want, do you want to take up that space, maybe half of it? Or 2 feet on one side, one on the other, or do you think that maybe on this side, you could reach 2 feet on this side? I mean, it's your, I'm just giving you both sides of the coin.
Yeah,
It's your call.
okay.
For those of you who don't like groceries, this is no fun at all, right? You go to the farmer's market. All right, one more minute and then we'll talk about it. All right. Let's talk about it. How many of you guys did a warm season plot? All right. Fred, what'd you put in there?
Start off with the cabbage, first of all, small single row of radishes
Okay,
around each. Then the top one, cabbage to start, lettuce, and 2 squares of spinach.
okay,
Laurel plant, and keep the leaf things together. The next one would be, row would be onions, garlic, carrots and turnip, all root crops. And the carrots are the ones that really need the depth. But why do just one little square like that? You got the whole side to double dig.
all right, good.
And then kale, this time keep it lengthwise, okay? And then behind that, the collards, because they'd be the tallest plant, most likely.
Okay, so you really did think it out. You thought
Yeah.
about not only how far apart, but how tall, and the depth of the digging for the root crops, which is really important.
Yeah, and then the peas on the trellis to what I'm assuming is the northwest side.
Okay,
Keep the sun.
okay.
Well, good.
All right, so you got 2 plots and you're gonna be eating well, is what
Yeah.
you're telling us. All right, anybody else do cool season? All right, Jerry, what do you got?
Now I got 2 rows of lettuce in the first block, followed by turnips and then a little kale. In the second 2 blocks, I got onions and then behind them potatoes. And then in the third block, I got 2 rows of radishes and the block behind them 2 rows of English peas. Then in the fourth 2 blocks, I got spinach, 2 rows, and then 2 rows of sugar snap peas.
Good. Okay, so y'all are thinking about this. You're
I'm
embracing the
assuming.
fact that it's a little trickier
than just growing straight row crops. How many of y'all like kale? Oh man, I just can't do it. I don't have it on there.
If
And
it's seasoned correct.
And when I go into Atlanta a lot to work the hippie gardens. I think you probably know what I mean. A lot of dreadlocks, a lot of, we don't believe in soap people, but they do great work with gardens and they always want to feed me lunch and
It's
swear
always kale.
But kale's easy to grow. I think that's, it's kind of like a weed plant that somebody realized you could eat. If you are trying to start
good
out
for you.
growing something, kale cannot fail. It's too tough for bug seed vinegar, I think. All
Yeah.
right, anybody do anything different with their cool season garden than these gentlemen did? So the lettuces are great. One of the great things about lettuce is that you can start it from seed and get about 1 million different kinds that all taste delicious instead of the bag at the grocery store or even what Home Depot sells. So if you really love lettuce and you're going to do a plot, think about starting your own seed and getting creative there. Under the carrots and the garlic and onions, we can grow, let them stay all winter long if we want to, because our ground never gets too bad cold-wise, and then just harvest them in May-ish. For the root crops, carrots, just when the stalks full season, good way to grow. And if you're dealing with the school garden, this is what you need to stick to. Yes, ma'am.
Well, that's where I got a little confused because when he was talking about a pool garden, I was thinking about lettuce, something you usually can grow pool and kids sometimes will eat and potatoes, but you didn't include that in the cool season there, so is that something you wanted to, you learned to stay away from lettuce with the school?
No, this was just, I just threw together actually what off the top of my head, what I see in a lot of gardens. These are the basic things, but no, lettuce is great. And actually lettuce should be up there because it doesn't take up much space. And if you don't do head lettuce, you do leaf lettuce, you can just, don't you just prune it off and eat it. And it's delicious. And a lot of schools, if they do the Golden Radish Award that comes out from Georgia Organics, lettuce is a really great taste test because you can taste the differences with that. Yes.
I took one of the plots and put asparagus in.
Okay.
Because it's a perennial,
Mhm.
and after 2 years, I think for kids, it will show them how it can expand, but how you have to harvest it the right time.
Yeah, there you go. And patience.
Patience,
Yeah.
right.
Asparagus takes patience.
But we don't need to do anything with that piece of ground.
No.
It's spring.
Right, there you go. Lots of lessons, right? All right, what about warm season crops? How many of y'all put tomatoes in your plot? And what did you find about putting tomatoes in such an area?
Can't get very many.
Can't get very many in there. Right. And sometimes they're tall and lanky and they might shade something else out, right? So what else besides tomatoes did you put in there?
Cucumber.
Cucumbers, okay. Do you all grow cucumbers on the ground or you trellis them? Yeah, trellis them.
Even though they ain't up on the ground.
All right, what else? Eggplant, okay. Okra,
Space is really limited, but I did do 2 rows of corn.
okay.
I know you have to have 2 rows for pollinate.
Did you do Silver Queen or Tom Hunter?
I didn't.
Okay. You can grow some, there are some shorter varieties. I personally love to grow popcorn, it's my favorite, or I grow blue corn. Because I can go to the farmer's market and I can get somebody who's a really good corn farmer who has lots and lots of space to give me the really good eating ears. But I love to grow blue corn and dry it and make flour, and I love to grow popcorn. And popcorn is not real tall.
What is blue corn?
Blue corn is a corn that is, it was developed out, the Inca Indians used it first, and it is blue. And you grow it like regular corn, but I let it dry on the stalk like popcorn, and then I will grind it in a wheat miller, a miller machine, and then use it to cook with. It's got a very good flavor. I'll tell you I will tell you my blue corn story. Years before you could buy blue corn from a catalog, I wanted to grow some. And we were going out west to Grand Canyons, and I knew that's where they grew the best blue corn. And it is in the Inca tribe, and they are very protective of it. But I thought, I'm gonna be charming, and I'm gonna go out there, I'm gonna sweet talk, and I'm gonna give you some corn seed. So I get there, and I'm at a park, the Grand Canyon Park, and I'm talking to people, and I say loudly to the people there, I wanna find somebody who can sell me some Inca corn seed. And the guy who's in charge, the forest ranger or whatever he's called, the main guy, I was making him uncomfortable, and I didn't understand why. And then I went up to kind of talk to him, and he actually slid a piece of paper like this to the table, to my hand, like a drug deal. And it was the name of someone. And he said on the note, quit talking about this, but here's where you need to go. And this is what you need to say to get it. And of course, I'm all in. Ooh, this is gonna be a adventure. My husband's like, there's no way, I'm taking you there. But we go, and I talk to one of the elders of the tribe, and I explained my deal that I was not going to sell the seed, and I went home and I grew blue corn, and it was delicious, and I sent them a thank you note, and made a really good story. So you can grow corn that's not quite so high. They have smaller varieties that are good to grow. Well, anybody else come up with anything different in the warm season? Somebody said squash. Better hope you got good pollinators for that, right?
Also room.
Yeah. Potatoes, or several of y'all mentioned potatoes. They're really, really tricky in a small area because they put off a lot of green, and depending on where those potatoes hit, they can be multi-leveled, which is what you want, or they can be spread out, which is a lot of land for a small amount of potatoes. But potatoes grown at home are really good. Yes?
Do you have any experience with cucumber and squash being close together and cross-pollinating and having a weird mix together?
I've grown squash and cucumbers next to each other for many, many years. I've never had a problem. Yeah.
So for potatoes, can you put another like border in the ground in a raised bed? You know what I mean?
To separate the down below?
No, like across. Put another, like, you know, you have your, like a 2x2?
Yes. I wouldn't, if I were just putting in potatoes for a 2x2, I wouldn't do it. I would, if you really, really wanted to do potatoes like that, I would actually get a whiskey half barrel to where you could, as they start putting leaves on, put more dirt on, so that you actually get potatoes down like that. If I was bound and determined I wanted to do potatoes, I would take up the whole plot because they spread out.
It would be a good educational plant to grow, I would think.
What I teach my school garden, my teachers for the school garden teacher training is in the summertime, if they don't want to deal with plots, to plant sweet potatoes. Because they take over everything and those big leaves shade weeds out, and they can just kind of forget about them almost until harvest time when they come back. So yeah, it's pretty good. For many years, I was the farm manager at Cagel's Dairy over in Hickory Flat, and I had a 4-acre garden that I managed, and I grew a lot of potatoes, sweet potatoes. And what we would do is we'd harvest them, and then I would give the tops to the cows because it was just so much space. But they're doable. It's just they take a lot of space.
Do they still have that great maze?
They do have maze. If you're at the maze and you look across the street from the maze, there's a 4-acre farm garden, and that was mine for about 7 years. I mean, it's that. Grew a lot of really cool things there. Had a lot of fun. One of the things that's not on this list, because not many people grow it, is peanuts. I love to grow peanuts. I grow them every year. They're fun. They are definitely a warm season crop, so it's kind of hard to do that. If you did it over the summer, you could harvest them when school started back. But we have a lot of varieties now that do pretty well in our soil, especially in a garden plot where you're double chills and you've done all the good stuff in the soil. Peanuts will grow pretty well here.
So did you plant the whole bed of peanuts then?
No, you don't have to, because you can kind of see where if you've ever seen peanuts grow, they're fascinating. You get the little pegs and you can see where they're going to peg. So you can control that. So I actually have at my house, one of my gardens has 4x4 plots, and I grow peanuts in a 4x4 plot. And then I just redirect the pegs so that I get the most peanuts in that plot.
Keep them from going outside.
When I see they're about to peg, I'll just move
What are you
them.
talking about, Becky?
A peanut plant has this thing called a peg, and it appears on the top side of the leaves, and it will go underground and form the peanut. And once you see those pegs, if you direct the plant so it actually goes down in the ground where you want it, you can control a little bit more in the peanuts are.
My problem with sweet potatoes is it went everywhere.
Yeah.
Even outside the bed.
Yeah. And you can't see what's going on underneath that ground, so you're,
No, not until you start to dig them up after, when you're ready to harvest them.
yeah.
I found sweet potatoes all over them.
They're good eating though, good stuff. So basically this exercise was just kind of to get you thinking about the complexities of wanting to grow a lot of food in a small space, and the choices you have to make. And I know, you know the saying where an eater, your eyes are bigger than your stomach? In my head, my husband always says that my eyes are bigger than my garden because I'll order all these things. And he's like, where are we gonna put all this stuff? I don't know. But it's just fun, and every year doesn't have to be the same, right? And if you're growing potatoes in your whole pot, then you could barter and share it with somebody else's ground. One of the neatest things ever is if you ever get the opportunity to work in a refugee garden. There's a huge one over in North DeKalb that I work at occasionally, and it is full with migrants and refugees, and they bring seeds from where they're from. It's the way they connect. And so I'll see things from there that I've not seen before, and they love to tell you about them and prepare them for you. So it's a culinary adventure to garden with people that aren't from here. So it's pretty fun. So any questions about this exercise? Have you thought about things a little differently than when you came into class today about this particular form of gardening? All right, so let's, I told Louise I was gonna just be a little over an hour today because I know you guys want to avoid kind of weather, but I have to talk about pollinators because it's a big issue for me. When I managed my 4-acre farm garden, one year I could not get squash. Because if you've ever been to Hickory Flat, to Kegels, it used to be a huge dairy. And over time, because of the economics of farming, they've had to sell off portions. So by the time I got on board, I had a 4-acre farm garden. They still had the dairy portion and the maize, but I could get out of my car and smell the 7 from all of the subdivisions that have filled in. I knew that was not good. And I couldn't get squash to make because squash has to be pollinator, you know, it has to be pollinated by pollinators. So I had to hand pollinate squash. I was never going to do that again. So the next year I actually had a beekeeper come and bring his bees, and now I'm a beekeeper. And this is huge. So this year, Georgia has our official pollinator protection plan. The EPA has asked every state to develop one. And it just so happens that some of the best entomologists in the world work for UGA, and they partnered with the Georgia EPD to come up with this plan. And it has a part for everyone, for big pesticide users, for farmers, for beekeepers, for homeowners, about how we need to manage everything with the pollinators in mind. So you can find this at the UGA entomology website. And you will actually, Louise, be getting a ton of those booklets. I delivered them to Julie Lynn last week. So the next update, you'll be getting the booklets that have the plan, but it's online. You can read it there. It's very interesting. And in order to help with that, help promote that, as the community school garden coordinator for the state, my big push for 2016 is to add pollinator gardens to all our school community gardens. So I have a big push this year. It's called the Pollinator Spaces Project, and we're really going to start pushing it on March the 1st. But if you look on that card I gave you, that has the website on it for my stuff, the School Community Garden Resources. If you go to this website, you will be directed to the Pollinator Spaces Project. And there are a ton of resources there to help everyone create a pollinator space. It doesn't have to be huge. It can be a small part of a plot. It can be a 2x2 part of a plot, or it can be bigger. And we actually have a plant list of plants that are easy, inexpensive, easy to find, all throughout the state of Georgia that are, we have perennials in there, we have a lot of annuals, we have mostly natives, we have a continual bloom, so you plant something, right now in my yard, for my bees, I have winter honeysuckle blooming, and when it's been 65 degrees last week, they were bringing in nectar and pollen from that winter honeysuckle. So there's suggestions on what to plant where, and after you've added your plots to your already existing garden, or created a new garden just for pollinators, if you take a picture of yourself or the garden and send it to me, and there are instructions on the website, you will get a certificate of participation, and your garden will be featured as part of the whole state. So at the end of the year, we're going to have pollinator gardens from top of the state to the bottom and all the way across. So every agent in the county is participating, or in the state, and I've been visited 3 out of the 4 districts already to talk about it. And I actually will have some seeds. If anybody needs some seeds, they should be in the next couple days. I was hoping they'd be here before today. So if you are interested in pollinators, like Alan is, and I hope everybody is to some extent, then whatever garden that you work in, I hope that you consider adding pollinator plants. And you should be able to find all the resources just by following the links on this page. Are there any questions about that? I'd love to see you guys do that. It'd be really great to have new master gardeners kind of show off to the old master gardeners that y'all are taking charge. Well, a couple things we do have a ready for people to started it because the school teacher asked me to. They wanted to take my school garden teacher training and post pictures of what they accomplished. And they might not live in the area, so they post pictures there. If I see something interesting, I post it. If I find a grant that's interesting, I post that as well. Between that and the blog, and all y'all should be set for school garden if you want to. We're coming down the pipe. We have some publications that'll be out in the next 2 years. Really nice, pretty ones on community school gardens to help beginners and advanced gardeners do really cool things in the garden. Are there any questions about anything that we've talked about today? All right, raise your hand if you learned something that is useful today, that you'll be able to take away and use. All right, great. Yes, I could have any more clarifying.
I just have a question about planting times. These dates seem early to me, very ambitious dates.
They seem early, okay.
Yeah, the spring planting,
Okay,
the 1st of April.
okay. Well, plants don't read the books, right? And when these specialists had to come up with a date. Now, we all know at my house, my average date of last frost is November the 7th. I have had a frost October the 3rd, and I have had a frost on Thanksgiving, first frost. That is 2-month swing. So what happens is, as you get better at gardening, you have to start somewhere, right? As you get better, you'll be able to say, oh, it's just not warm enough yet for those peas or those beans. They're just not going to germinate. Or you get these people who say, I'm going to get those tomatoes in the ground, and they're going in today, and I'm going to microclimate them. You know, so this is really a guideline. And as you get going, you will be able to figure out in your little area what's the best thing. One of the things to think about for all plants that we deal with, basically, the soil temperatures are what matter. It's not the air temperature. A couple winters ago, in January, we had 180-degree day. And I had every landscaper in my office ready to put down fertilizer on their lawn. But that 180-degree day lasts a 180-degree day, and the ground temperatures are still soil temperature. If you go to the georgiaweather.net site, you'll be able to find soil temperatures of 2, 4, and 6 inches. And that's going to really tell you what you need to know. One key number is 55 degrees. If you have about 4 inches at 55 degrees, a lot of the stuff that we love is going to start germinating. I was always told that 55 degrees is when the forsythias bloom. That's not always the case, because mine are blooming now. But that's a little bit of a guideline. But the soil temperatures are what's gonna determine germination, and then you'll have to take care of whatever comes up, baby that, but you'll figure it out. Those are just guidelines that you started. Anything else? Yes, ma'am.
How do we go about marketing?
But that's the fun part, and I love that part. Marketing is my favorite part. When a community garden starts, you need to get the community involved. And one of the ways I always, when I'm working closely with somebody that starts one, is you have an open house day, and you invite the public service people. You invite the firemen and the policemen for a couple of reasons. One, you want them to know that you're there working, and if there's ever a problem, that you want them to know exactly where it is, and they know everybody, right? So you invite them, and you invite the town council, you invite anybody like that you know, as a ribbon cutting or however you want to do, because you want community partners. Eventually, what you'd like to happen is community partners donating to your garden, either with supplies or funds or whatever. So using that avenue, using just the people that you already know in the garden, a lot of times the small local papers love local stories, especially about school gardens. So you could just call them up and say, we got a school garden starting, or we have a community garden starting. And if they don't have a lot else going on, they can definitely show up, take some pictures and help you out. But you definitely don't want to create a garden where you're the only people that know about it, because you want to keep it a safe, neat area, and you want to have community support with it. So that's a great question. Anything else?
I just looked up the soil temperature at Gulf Club, Georgia, which is the closest to here in Alpharetta. 4-inch level, 34.1 degrees.
We got a while to go. And a lot of the old timer people will say it's Good Friday, so on Good Friday, I'm gonna look ahead and see what and Good Friday is really early this year. So I don't know, how that's gonna work. But over time, you kind of get a sense and when it's gonna be okay. But there's a lot of pressure, you want them in the ground, so we can start eating them. Anything else? Well, I hope to see all you guys working hard out in the gardens with Louise, and I'm sure she'll share with me what y'all are up to. If you have any questions, just give me a shout, an email, check out the website, let me know if there's anything that I can do for y'all. Alan, what is our weather forecast? Are we having any?
Well, a little bit of ice just went past us.
Okay, so we're in good shape. All right.
We're in the zone.
In the zone.
It's 33 degrees.
It's 218, so.
And the roll having gone up.
Thank you, Becky, that was a great talk. Our group is especially interested in food gardening, school gardening,